Bollocks. Bollocks. Bollocks.
Bollocks. Howdy, I'm Kurt Williams, and today we're talking about issue 1 of Sandman Universe John Constantine Hellblazer Dead in America by Spurrier and Aaron Campbell. Now, I don't know anything about what's going on in Hellblazer right now. I haven't read any of Spurrier's previous work on it, but I guess this just goes to show that if you reboot a series every 12 issues or so, you do get new readers just because it's an issue 1. And I hate that that worked on me, but frick, it's a good issue. I'm a big fan of Spurrier's work. I like what he's doing with Nightcrawler lately, and I'm especially fond of his series The Rush. And if you haven't read The Rush, it's one of those run-of-the-mill cryptids terrorizing an inescapable Yukon mining town type stories. You know, the usual. And sure, this series had really good art, and I like the time period that it takes place in, but really what I love about it is Spurrier's writing style. And you can say what you want about Spurrier, alright, you can say that he ruined Nightcrawler, that his stories are just a bunch of edgy posturing, that he's more handsome than God, that he once defeated 4 dozen Nazi yoga instructors in the Bermuda Triangle with only a roll of duct tape and a used toothpick. You can say all that, but you have to admit that this guy has a really strong vocabulary. It's not very often that you get a writer who knows how to vividly capture the accents and vocabulary and speaking styles of so many different kinds of people. In The Rush, he used this really convincing 19th century American frontiersman vernacular. It's very good. And in Hellblazer, the type of speaking style he gives to Constantine is not only spot on for the character, but it's also very different from the other characters. Everybody speaks in their own unique way. It's not like Spurrier is speaking for everybody. He's getting into the brain of all of these characters and having them speak as that character should speak. And even if other writers have that concept in mind, they're not always capturing it in such a specific way. And listen, I got my literature degree. I spent a lot of time around the jerks who just want to impress you with how articulate they are and how big their vocabulary is. And those people suck, but I don't think that Spurrier is one of them. I think his language is colorful and effective, not over the top. And yeah, his writing style tends to be a little bit more cerebral than most of the Men in Tights stuff that we're used to, but I think he also has these very well done, big, dramatic moments, and he's got lots of little funny jokes in there. This issue of Hellblazer is a good example of how well-rounded Spurrier's writing can be. Like I said, I'm not up to date on what Hellblazer is doing. There is this really convenient page of text to let you know what's going on, but it's not specific at all, which kind of leads me to believe that it doesn't really matter what's been going on previously. We just need a few Cliff's Notes, we need to know who these characters are, and then we're good to go. So most of this issue seems like setup for the rest of the series. We've got Constantine hiding in America from whatever happened previously in the series. It doesn't go into detail. He has a run-in with the Sandman, who gives him a task to go and find his missing grains of sand, and then he travels to the bayou so he can enlist the help of the Swamp Thing, who is now taking on a very different form than usual. And I'm not going to spoil it. I feel like people could be either really excited by it or really upset about it. You should just go find out for yourself what Swamp Thing is looking like these days. Now, this does take place in the Sandman universe, and that's obvious in ways other than the fact that it has the character Sandman in it, because the series has this overwhelming, surreal, supernatural feel to it that is very much in the vein of the Sandman comics by Gaiman. And we get a lot of these cool images to show us that this is not a comic limited by the typical rules of comics. It's not purely physical. There's a lot of weird, spooky stuff going on. John Constantine is still a saucy edgelord, and that's the kind of thing you either like already or you don't, so there's no big change, is my point. He is very witty and funny in this issue. I think that Spurrier is bringing out the full potential of wit that the character has. Part of the reason I picked up this issue in particular, because I don't normally pick up DC titles, is because of the subtitle Dead in America. Honestly, sometimes I really like seeing European caricatures of American culture. I think they're fun. Maybe that makes me a typical egotistical American. I don't care. I just want to read about myself. And the first taste of America we get is this panel here, which includes this roadside cross at the bottom of the panel that's supposedly for this trucker-looking dude who wears a Lynyrd Skynyrd shirt and loves to drink whiskey, as you can tell by his picture that is on the cross and all the whiskey bottles sitting on top of it, which I think is supposed to imply he was in a drunk driving accident, which seems like kind of a low blow, Simon. Oh, and he's got a little Trump flag hiding behind him. I didn't even notice that the first time. Cute. And then in the other corner of the panel, we see this billboard for a place called Ticky Tacky Mermaids. It says, home of the Murica Maids, America's only RV park with live mermaids, half fish, all-American woman. Frick, man, I might be offended by that if it wasn't so painfully accurate. Murica Maids is pretty funny, honestly. But then this other slice of Americana that he throws in is this really racist cop, who pulls over the whole crew while they're driving cross-country in their big double-decker bus, and when they say, why did you pull us over, he says, black boy driving a big red bus. I ain't never seen that before. Okay, I get that we're in the South at this point in the story, and maybe I'm a little sheltered growing up in Midwest America. I'm definitely way into Union territory up here. Not that you'd be able to tell if you drove 30 minutes in almost any direction from where I am in Michigan, but I've been around the country that I live in. I've seen the places, and this kind of thing feels a little outdated. Something from the 50s or 60s or maybe 70s or maybe 80s, possibly the 90s. And I guess maybe during the Black Lives Matter movement with the Antifa stuff going on. Okay, maybe it's possible, but it still feels like a heavy-handed portrayal. Here's something I didn't understand. The first 2 pages follow this zombie who's crawling up a hill, and then he notices some people down the hill, and his arm falls off, and then he rolls down the hill, and it shows us that he had just seen a bunch of people shooting a porno. And that's a great bit of slapstick to provide some contrast to the rest of the pretty intellectual story that it's gonna be, but I don't see how it relates to the rest of it. Why is there a zombie? Why is he crawling up the hill towards the Hollywood sign? Does Simon Spurrier know that the Hollywood sign is like a very, very, very small part of America, or does he think the Hollywood sign is everywhere in America? Because we didn't really spend any time in Hollywood, he just got on the bus and went to the bayou. So it's funny, but I fail to see how it relates. I honestly don't have a ton to say about the art. It's by Aaron Campbell, and he is great. He really knows what he's doing. It's not a style that's my favorite per se, but it is really well done. Some of this pencil work is a little more scratchy than I'd like. It's definitely leaning towards expressionism rather than realism, but there's lots of depth to the panels. The lighting is great. The character work is good. The anatomy is good. Campbell is pretty good at portraying these little changes in expression that's very convincing, very realistic. But, you know, not my cup of tea. If you're a big fan of the Sandman universe or Swamp Thing or Hellblazer in general, you're probably gonna love this. So I thought issue 1 of Hellblazer Dead in America was pretty good. There's honestly not a lot that happened in this first issue. It was mostly setting up the series for what's gonna come next. But we spent a lot of time with the characters, and Spurrier got to really flex his muscles as far as dialogue goes. It's fun to look at. It was fun to read. Pretty good for a DC comic. So I'm gonna give it a high 7, maybe a low 8. It's pretty good. Not my favorite thing out there, but it's a good Hellblazer comic to read for somebody who hasn't read many Hellblazer comics. You should read this series if for no other reason than to see what he's doing with Swamp Thing, because that's pretty funny. Did you read it? What do you think?